Chicago, Chicago, the toddling town. Chicago, Chicago, I'll show you the town. I love it. Bet your bottom dollar you lose the blues in Chicago, Chicago, the town that Billy Sunday couldn't shut down. On State Street, that great street, I just want to say, they do things that they don't do on Broadway. Say, you'll have the time of your life. I saw a man, he danced with his wife in Chicago, Chicago, my hometown.
Good evening. Thanks so much for tuning in to William Pace Show. My guest this evening is Bob Matthews, candidate for Montgomery County Commission. And before we went to break, we were talking about, small businesses, economic growth, entrepreneurs, and I long to see that the entrepreneurs, the merchants, the businesses that used to line the corridors of the main thoroughfares of the county. I remember Salem Avenue from the bridge all the way out to Trotwood. There were all kinds of businesses, restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
I miss the restaurants. I miss the, like Anticolis. Remember Anticolis?
Yes.
They used to be there and they used to have the Keyhole restaurant, and there were so many different establishments. I shouldn't say this, but I miss there used to be right across from the old Good Samaritan Hospital, the Baskin Robbins.
Yeah.
They took the Baskin Robbins out of off of Salem, and so people are missing that. Those businesses brought a life to the corridor. They brought an energy to the corridor. They brought a quality of life to the corridor that people are really yearning for again.
Mm-hmm.
And as I remember on the corridors of Salem Avenue, there used to be 4 grocery stores. There were 2 Liberals, there was a Kroger's, there was a Stump's, all kinds of things. And I think it was a robust economy. And I think many people are wanting that. But what I hear from many people trying to start a business, they just don't get the support that they need.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I heard you say economic growth, would all of the above then be considered as a part of economic growth?
Yes, it would. And if you're going to have those businesses succeed, you need to have your finger on the pulse as to what kind of issues they're having now that are causing them to leave. And a good example of that, which is near and dear.
Say that again.
You have to have your pulse on what the issues are that are causing them to leave.
So that means that people were not listening
Right.
to what the merchants and the restaurateurs and people were saying.
That's right.
And so as a result of people not listening, they just left.
Right, and a really prime example is near and dear to everyone's heart is Good Samaritan Hospital. And what happened, I brought this question up with, this question was brought up with the current commissioners. Well, what happened there? And their answer was, well, we got 1 hour's notice that they were moving out. Well, now come on, they didn't get 1 hour's notice and then an hour later the Good Samaritan was a pile of rubble. There must have been warning indications, or they should have been talking and finding out what's going on and negotiating. I took a course in negotiating, and with negotiating, you try to figure out something that's important that you want and something that's important that they want and get that exchanged. And I think the art of negotiating is lost with the current generation. So they didn't figure out a way to negotiate to keep that there. I mean, maybe there was a way and maybe there wasn't, but to come in and say, we only have 1 hour's notice tells me that they were not on top of the situation. And so that's what we need if we want to keep our businesses here. And we also need to talk to businesses that are thinking of coming here, and even those that have thought of coming here and decide to go somewhere else, and query them and say, well, why did you go to somewhere else? And can we fix that? And can we change it? Or what's weighting your decision right now?
I like that because I've often felt there's an old adage, there's a saying that for example, we take a church, and in a church, you got people that are going to be transferred to their jobs, take them elsewhere. You got people that are going to pass away. You got a new minister in the church, and people don't like the new minister, so they're out of there. And so, but you always have to keep rebuilding,
Yes.
and rebuilding. Some businesses are going to go under. They're going to go bankrupt, or maybe they just decide to close this site up. But you just can't wait till everything just gone.
Yeah.
It's like if your savings account, you're going to wait till you get down to your last, and then you're going to say, well, I'm broke or something. You can't let the county just go plumb down. You've got to be building and replacing things.
Well, not only that, William, it's not just dropping off linearly like that. 5 places, and then there's 4, then there's 3. What happens is, as each business leaves or closes, then the remaining businesses, there's more pressure on them because there's less tax money coming in, so there's less revenue to help those businesses. So that puts a heavier burden on the ones that remain. And then until finally stores are just sitting there by themselves and no one around them. Now nobody goes there because there's no others around. So you've got to keep it filled. You've got to keep it moving. Otherwise, it starts a vicious cycle. It just cascades down to nothing.
And an example of that is what went on in Trotwood. The businesses kept leaving. And what I have found over the years that when you have a cluster of businesses, they piggyback off of each
Correct.
other. If I'm going to go here and they got an Office Depot there, or if they've got a restaurant there, I can get a bite to eat, or if they've got a clothing store, they all piggyback off of each other. But when things are let go and it becomes sparse, then it's hard for the remaining businesses to keep going.
Yes.
You thrive better when there is a cluster of businesses.
Yes.
And like now, trying to rebuild the Salem Avenue corridor again to what I remember it used to be will take a huge, gigantic strategy and approach. So this leads me to my next question. What proactive strategies would you implement to recruit businesses in Montgomery County?
Well, I'm sure we have an economic development group now, so I would check with them and see what they're doing and strengthen whatever work they're doing to bolster that. And that includes reaching out to other cities that, other companies that are thinking of might move here, reaching out to the companies that are here to see if any of them are leaving, and try to reduce the bureaucracy for people to come in. The other thing I would do, when you start a new job, they do what they call an onboarding process, in the business world. And that takes that person and make sure they go through all the steps to get onboarded. I would set up an onboarding for new businesses that come into the area and assign to them an onboarding coach that's a one-on-one person, a real live person that works directly with the owner or manager of that business on an ongoing basis for the first few months to make sure they're getting what they need, that they're getting through any paperwork that's needed, and that that doesn't just fall off the edge. And then we would keep a record of what we'd learned from onboarding that person. And that would go into the onboarding process that would continue on to new ones.
So there would become like a format, a plan, an instrument to foster new business.
Right.
And that there would be maybe mentors, people there to safeguard them in their journey in the opening of a business.
Yeah, just like a new baby. You don't just have a baby and then send it to school or leave it at home. You've got to be there with it and make sure
nurturing
it.
Right. Yeah. More with Bob Matthews when we return. Stay with us.
You'll have the time of your life. I saw a man, he danced with his...
Hi, I'm William Pace. Thanks so much for tuning us in tonight. My guest is Bob Matthews, candidate for Montgomery County Commission. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you, William.
I want to talk about the housing in Montgomery County. How do you feel about the current state of the housing here?
Okay. Yeah, housing is a big issue here, unfortunately. And I know, for example, the county, to their credit, some of the county commissioners have put together plans like land bank and stuff, and that's really good. And I would support that and continue to make sure that that moves ahead. The problem, as you can see if you drive around, is a large number of vacant houses. Well, there's several problems. Large number of vacant houses is one of the problems. Tied into that problem is the absentee owners. And so I don't know for sure how to deal with absentee owners, but it's not being dealt with right now because the absentee owners have no interest a lot of times in maintaining houses, so they just sit there and deteriorate down to nothing. So we need to come up with some sort of plan to incentivize people to, not just incentivize them, but to help them take care of their houses.
What I'm hearing and seeing that many investors are coming in from who knows where in America and other countries, buying distressed properties here. They become landlords from afar, and they're not there to really see to it that the properties are well cared for.
Right.
And is there something can be implemented to maybe watch who's coming in and buying the properties here?
Yeah, I don't think the problem is necessarily that they're not present, but the property is neglected. I mean, I really, if people want to invest in Dayton from afar, and I mean Montgomery County from afar, and help us build it back up, I'm okay with that.
You're okay
What I'm
with
not
that?
okay with is them just buying them and then neglecting them so that they run downhill. So I would think, I mean, this would take a little looking into, but I know like at Miami Township, we could use zoning rules to force people to fix things up. So when a house just sits there and runs down, is there no zoning that gets onto that? And some sort of there should be some effort done by the leaders to make sure that that cannot happen. And there are draconian measures that have been put in place in some cities I know, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But the point is, here, it doesn't seem to be addressed because whatever's being done isn't working. I was sitting with a friend yesterday on the porch on Catalpa and looking across the street at a beautiful home there that's just simply being used to store stuff in. Nobody lives there. And it's a beautiful home on the outside, but the paint is starting to peel everywhere and it's just not being taken care of. Something needs to be done to make sure that people take care of their property. And also sometimes the economics of taking care of your property is a difficulty. I know like in my neighborhood where I live, for example, when the sidewalks start breaking up, the township wants us to fix them, but that's pretty pricey. So there needs to be some kind of economic help or something to make sure that gets done. If it's nothing more than a loan with a lien against the property so that the next person pays for it or something. Anyhow, some process there to make sure that people who are struggling financially still can take care of their property at some level.
And one of the things that I miss is that so many, every time you pass by a vacant lot, there used to be a house there.
Right.
And it's gone.
Right.
And some of the houses had great historic value to them.
Yes.
And they're gone. And they don't build houses like that anymore.
Right.
The character, the workmanship, the art that went into those homes. And really, sadly enough, it's part of the county is tearing down some of the important sites of Montgomery County, those structures, you know. There used to be a beautiful building right down across the bridge in Salem. It was made out of stone, and they don't make buildings like that anymore.
Right.
But it was demolished.
You know, we talked a few minutes ago about, we talked earlier about how when there's a group of companies together and they start failing one by one, that it leaves holes and then you lose it.
Same way with the housing.
It's the same thing with the housing. And once a house is torn down, I'm not saying we can avoid tearing them down, but once a house is torn down, there's a hole there, and it's highly unlikely that someone's going to come in and build a house to fill that hole. And so what happens, the neighborhood just starts falling apart piece by piece, like your teeth rotting out one at a time, and you pull it and don't replace it, and pretty soon you know what your smile looks like, right? So anyhow, we can't let that happen. It's so critical to stop that deterioration, because
Decay.
once it starts, it's almost impossible to reverse it. So again, stronger something on the housing to make sure housing. And the other thing that happens is when you lose residents along a given street, you still got to provide fire service to that street. You still got to provide police service to that street, but you have fewer taxpayers there to help support those. So again, it's essential that we keep the neighborhoods full and living and thriving. And I don't see any strong effort at this point from the county that's doing that.
And that is critical
Yes.
to the welfare of the county. What do you need? Why? Tell me, why do we need change, new insight into the commission?
Okay, well, first off, the current commission, as it stands, with 3 women with all of the same political persuasion. So diversity is a big name, big word. I would say there is 0 diversity there when you have 3 women approximately the same age, the same political persuasion, and all from their viewpoint. You know, we certainly need some diversity. I would encourage you to consider a male view of some things in there. Another thing is the ones that are there and now, like the lady who I would like to replace, her background is law. Now, lawyers are not known for saving money. If you've ever talked to a lawyer, they're pretty used to spending money, your money and everybody else's money. So I, as a business with a business background, would give certainly something different there. The second is, as I've already touched on, 16 to 20 years for the current commissioners that are up for re-election, and stuck in a rut and satisfied with how things are. No need to feel, no feeling that there's a need to change. But most importantly, I think they've all lost touch with, first, business people, and second, with the working people, and finally with the financially struggling people in our area. That's why some of the policies they've put in place over the last few years have come about, because they're not in touch with the needs of these groups. Where I have extensive experience working in business, being a working person, and have worked with financially challenged people in the county for the last 20 years. So that's why I think we really could use some change. I can do a far better job for us in that position.
More with Bob Matthews when we return. Stay with
They
us.
do things that they don't do on Broadway.
Thanks so much for tuning in to William Pace Show. My guest this evening is Bob Matthews, candidate for Montgomery County Commission. Well, we've had so much to talk about here, and I really feel that we've covered a lot of area here, but I wanted to ask you this question. Dayton is the seat, the heart of the county. How can we strengthen the seat, the heart of Montgomery County? Because the heart is the main function, and if it's not functioning, then everything else is sort of going to be out of kilter.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And absolutely, Dayton is the heart of the county. It's critical. The suburbs wouldn't even be here if Dayton wasn't here, or at least they wouldn't have started. So it's very critical. Our courts are there, our arts and entertainment are there, and we have several really nice things like the Schuster Center, the Metro Parks. All those are spun off from the city, and of course the county seat being there. So yes, it's very important that Dayton do well. And so a big portion of my time will be spent working with the elected officials and departments with the city of Dayton, because there are some similarities, there are a lot of similarities between the things that Dayton does and the county has to do. And so we can, for example, police and, law enforcement, and that has to be shared and has to be coordinated. I also think that it's good to take whatever services, if there's any way the county can provide or coordinate services with all the cities and townships around, and thereby create some efficiencies, as was done with Central 911 Dispatch, for example. That serves most of the county. And another thing is, it's already in there, is most of Montgomery County uses Dayton City Water, as we find out, unfortunately, whenever they run into difficulties, both this year and last year. So it's important that we make sure Dayton has those. As I was saying, there is overlap. I was at a meeting at a Dayton neighborhood meeting last week, and there was someone there speaking from the trash collection and about recycling. And so the recycling issues they have are also the same recycling issues that Montgomery County has. So if one group can solve them, and both of us benefit, and all the other cities and townships benefit, that's worth it. So one of the things I would do is absolutely work cohesively with all the townships and cities and Dayton to make sure that we can pool our resources. It's called economy of scale in the business world. Instead of having everybody run everything, their own little show, you have an effort there to do things independently. But yet at the same time, while you coordinate resources, you still maintain control at the individual level. Dayton should have its own control over its boundaries, and the suburbs and townships should have control within their boundaries. All the cooperation should be voluntary, not forced. So I think that's possible. And Dayton is a beautiful place, a lot of good things going for it, and it's shared out through the county. And a lot of the county has a lot of things like parks and stuff. They're very nice places to go. So yeah, we want to try to leverage those upon each other. So that's what I would do to make sure Dayton and all the individual cities are connected and working well together.
Wonderful. For the viewers listening at home, how can they get in contact with the campaign? Let's give them a website address and talk a little bit about maybe if they would like to get involved in the campaign. There's many opportunities, I hear.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about that.
All right. My website is bob4cc.com. That's Bob, B-O-B, the number 4, CC, as in County Commissioner.com, bob4cc.com. I have a Facebook page also which is named Bob4cc. So how can others get involved? Well, if you get on there and get familiar with I have a lot more information about me personally, and what I would do and what I think is important is on that website. And if you feel like you could support me, I'd appreciate it if you would. Number one, tell your friends to look at the website and see if they would like to support me in November. And then the second thing, if you would like, there is a place there where you can donate. And also we've set up several things you can purchase, like Mahaffey's pies and fruit from Bayer Melon Farm and vegetables and things like that. So you'll see something for your donation, something you can actually eat. So if you'd like to participate that way. And of course, we'll be looking for volunteers to help out. So if you think that I have something to offer and would like to see these ideas implemented, really could use some volunteers to help out or support me financially through purchases or donations from that website. My slogan is rebuilding the county together. It's not going to be done just by the county commissioners or their little group, their group of people that support them, but it's going to take the citizens of Montgomery County to help us rebuild it back to what it had been in the past and make it a more pleasant place for everyone to live.
Thank you so much for coming on the program tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Matthews, candidate for Montgomery County Commission. There's more to come on the William Pace Show. Stay with us.